Hello, my name is Imani Rama, and we are here today to have a conversation about One Chance to Be a Man. It is the first book written on Soul Conscious Books by author D. Revolution. And we just want to have a conversation around the book, the importance of the book, and the things that we got from the book. So I just want to get started. So I want to start out by asking some questions. The first one is, and anyone could just jump in with your answer, if you could just tell me some facets of the character's personality, the main character in the book. Could you tell me some facets of his personality?
When I read the book, I was kind of taken with the determination of this young man to overcome all the obstacles that seemed to exist that were with kind of dream killers to him. But yet and still, despite of everything that was happening in his life, with his family, with his neighbors, with the people that he grew up with, he was still determined to be who he eventually turned out to be. That was one thing that kind of stuck with me throughout the story, you know, regardless of setback after setback, the loss of jobs, the loss of relatives, the loss of friends, incarceration. He still stayed on his given path. And I found that fascinating.
Awesome.
He was very ambitious all the time, even when he was doing wrong. He was still ambitious about it, you know, so he, you know, he always had this fight in him, you know, as you're saying. So even when he was living that hard life, there was still this something in him that he wanted to always kind of stay on top. So even when it was wrong, he still wanted to be on top of it, you know. And then when he got to the point that he recognized he wanted to do better for himself, you know, he had this even more drive. And I just thought that was, pretty amazing.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing as well. Some things that I think about in his personality, one thing that I know when I think about D. Revolution is he comes across as he called himself rough McGruff, that type of thing. But what I saw was an innocent child. Mm-hmm. And just to see his childhood and how he progressed into the man that he became because of his trials, incarceration, the poverty that he experienced. And so that really helped me to have a question to think about, you know, how does that help other people understand, like, the heart and the mind of a black man growing up in the inner city of Chicago, thinking through how he develops from those type of circumstances.
And to piggyback off of what you're saying, that was the interesting part to me, to see how we can go from being young and innocent and nothing being our fault and us not having control over situations, to next thing you know, you're forced to make decisions that you're mentally not even ready to make. So when he went from, you know, just being this young child going to school and wanting to be in school to having to join a gang and having to fight day by day and having to stand ground on who he was, really, when you don't even know who you are at that age.
Exactly.
And so it's interesting, and like you said, maybe that is something that America needs to see. This is what it's like when you have to be forced to make certain decisions at such a young age, and how that carries on into you being an adult.
So what would you say would make his mindset develop in the way that it did to lead him to the things that he experienced?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed was that he had to learn a lot of things on his own, not only on his own, but from a mother who was not, what you say, the best example, because the thing that she was going through, she couldn't give him the type of training that he probably needed in order to be able to see life and see society as the way it should be. So he was forced to have to be a man on his own with a mother who was doing her very best, but she had her own demons that she was dealing with.
Right.
And as a result, he had to try to find the truth on his own in the streets.
Exactly. I think about, I was raised by a single parent. When I grew up, my parents split up when I was young. And I think that could be a lot of our stories in our culture, to grow up in single parent households, they call it broken households and things like that. And I think that really like starts that picture being painted when the ideal upbringing. Even sometimes people can have two parents and it's not the most ideal.
Right.
Your stories of, you know, your parents, one parent being alcoholic, one parent being abusive, that type of thing. I think that really makes a difference, especially in our age group. And then the current, like millennials raising kids by themselves as well. I don't see as many people get married either in the black community, especially growing up, being born in the 70s and late 70s and things like that. Either I didn't have that many friends who both their parents were in the home, that had cars, that had homes, that type of thing. And I think that really, like, it paints a picture of some of the things that we walk right into, the disadvantages, not being able to have different experiences in life because of the way we're raised. And I think the more people understand, to me, sometimes those things create personalities and mindsets, and you live in a place where you have to be in survival mode all the time. So if I'm a mom and I'm struggling, like you said, with my own demons, and I'm bringing children into this world, creating demons for them as well, you know that. And I know my mom did the best she could. I'm sure his mom did the best she could with the car that she was dealt with, the situation that she grew up in, that the author speaks of in the book also. That mindset really plays a part into what he gets involved in. Sometimes we look, in my opinion, you look for places to belong. You look for places to protect you. And that's where the gangs could come involved, that type of thing.
And the one thing I definitely want to make clear is that you don't, when you're living it, you don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I'm in a single parent home. You don't, when you're actually going through it, you're just living life and you're just dealing with everyday things. It's just your life. It's just what it is. And when I look back, as I was writing this book, and I look back and I was writing some of these things, I had to, it took me a while to really understand a lot of the decisions I made 20 years ago that affect me today.
Right.
And that's the thing that really bothers me. It took me to get into my 40s for me to finally say, man, it's really hard being a black man out here. It took me all these years to really know what was regular life for me. When I was in my early 40s, I said, man, it's just really tough out here for us, But other than that, I'm just trying to survive, and you're just trying to do what you can to get by, to have a place to stay, to eat. I grew up hungry, and I got picked on a lot, and so I'm a little rough, because I don't want nobody to think that they can mess with me now. You know what I'm saying? I got picked on a lot when I was little. I mean, a lot of things that I was not able to write, that I didn't put in the book. But, a lot of people would look at me today and say, D-Rail got picked on a lot. You know what I'm saying? But I got bullied a lot, growing up. Because I was a compassionate guy. I was a little guy that was willing to share my fireworks. That's who I was. And as I began to grow up and people I'm fighting in high school and I'm doing all these things, I was like, man, I just got to start letting people know that they can't do this to me. And so, my life changed in that aspect because I had to, in Chicago, when people find that they can pick on you, they're going to continue to do it. And so many of the times in high school, I had a lot of rough years in high school. Like, if I ever had to repeat my life, I would skip over high school because it was just rough. I was fighting all the time, and I was getting picked on all the time, and with gang fights and being suspended for mob action, as they called it, and things like that. And the games we played, when friends of mine, I had a gun pointed to my head and things like that, and that was fun to them, But when I look back on that stuff now, it's like, man, I really went through that. I'm writing this, and I'm like, man, I really went through that. This is my real life I'm writing about, and so. It meant a lot to me that, when people read it, people who actually knew me don't know those stories. until you read it, and then everybody's like, wow, you went through this, or this happened to you, and so, you know, again, when you're going through it, you don't know you're going through it until you get out of it.
Exactly. So D-Rev mentioned the fireworks and his friend, make sure his friend has fireworks. When we think about the way that we're raised and experiences in our childhood, sometimes we have a lot of traumatic experiences, sometimes we have good memories, things like that. Could you tell me what was the most memorable thing for you that you read about D-Rev's childhood?
I think for me, although his reality was not my reality, I was kind of amazed at how much I could relate to some of the experiences that he had. I mean, like finding out things about your parents that you didn't know, and the way you psyched yourself up to cope with that, to accept that fact, okay, this is how it is, and we're just going to let that slide and move on past it, or work through it. You know, and those kind of things, but yet still you got to think about the psychological disappointment, or the letdown, or the shame of maybe your friends knowing what the reality is, you know, somebody on drugs, or somebody involved in an alternative lifestyle, or whatever. And a lot of us have those same experiences, although maybe not as traumatic or not in the same sense as he did. And we all tend to cope with them different ways. I mean, some of us sweep them under the rug, some of us develop amnesia. We don't even remember that it happened the way that it happened, you know. But like you said, as you develop later on in life and you look back at things that shaped who you are now or why you do things the way you do it, you can see some of the similarities in our life and in his experience, and maybe possibly in all black men's experience in America, faced with the things that we have to cope with just to grow up, you know, just to deal with reality.
Yeah, and, for me, bringing up the alternative lifestyle, that was a little rough growing up, you know, because my mother was not necessarily accepting the fact herself that she was a lesbian, and so she hid it from us, her children, a lot. But, you know, kids on the block and, you know, people around us would make comments and tease us. So I was dealing with the issue inside the house, and I was dealing with the issues outside of the house as well. So I really had no place to relax. And I think I put in the book that, you know, I went to my grandmother's house or my friend's house whenever I wanted to get away from the environment. But it was always something going on in the house, whether it was with the women or drugs. And then outside the house, I was trying to survive. So it was just never really a place to relax and chill out and get to know, you know, this guy who was giving out fireworks or want to share his fireworks is really who I am today and who I was then. But I had to, you know, learn and become something else in order to survive.
And with that, I was going to say, I'm originally from the south side of Chicago, so I've witnessed a lot of things that he was saying is true. We don't know how to support in families. We don't know how to show love. When the sad part was like he couldn't even get true love from his own siblings. You know, they were picking on him, and that causes a lot of stress and trauma on a young child, and you carry that with you all day, every day, because you're getting it at home, you're getting it at school, you're getting it on the block, you're getting it from the police. So you just have this burden on you as a young child 24/7. Then if you go home and there's no food, like in his situation, there were times when he was hungry. Now you have to think, where am I getting my food from? Then when the lights go out, you know, all of that is a lot of stress and trauma. Besides, how is somebody going to love me? Exactly. So you're dealing with a lot, and that's what he was dealing with. And it is something that you can relate to, or hopefully he can now be able to show people this is what it's like being a young black male or just a young black child.
And in fact, the lights always got cut off in the wintertime. Chicago wintertime. The lights never got cut off in the summertime. It was always the winter. So you really had to, I mean, it was always cold outside, and you know, you may spend 9 months a year in the winter in Chicago. I mean, soon as September hit, it's cold. And so, you know, a lot of things went bad in the wintertime. You know, I get a little depressed now in the winter, probably because of all the stuff, all the memories and things like that. But yeah, you know, all of that stuff is in the book. The police, the stuff I went through with the police, and friends and being hungry and all of that stuff. So, I mean, I forgot the original point that I was making, but...
Childhood.
I wanted to piggyback on what she was saying about the times when you didn't receive the type of love that you thought you should have gotten, or the fact that you didn't know that you were not getting the type of love from your family. And until, in my situation, I was able to see myself through what he was saying, because we never hugged each other growing up. We never said, I love you on a daily basis to each other. We never knew what saying love to each other meant, because it was not allowed. It was not, or I would say allowed, but it was not a practice that we were doing. Or our parents didn't have the time because they were so busy trying to work and trying to take care of us, and we were doing so much wrong things. They was too busy beating us to say I love you. So when I finally started hearing people talking about love, it was when I came to Nashville and when I was going to college, and I saw young people hugging each other. Now, when I was growing up, the only time you hugged each other was when you was getting ready to hug each other for a reason. So to love each other, to hug each other just to hug each other, that was foreign to me. And the first time I heard my mother say I love you to me was almost 3 years ago.
Wow.
3 years ago.
So it's still transcending into your current life.
Current lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I can imagine the feeling he was having. And I used to say I could see the transition of him changing when he came to Nashville. It was like he had went to a different planet, because he was like walking around looking at people and saying, these people are nice. These people are nice.
I tell you what, one thing that took me by surprise, even though your mom went through a lot, she was on drugs, she was always working a lot of the time when you were growing up, and she put you through private school. I was like, what, D-Rev had a little uniform on, going to a private school? And that's one thing that really stood out to me, that your mom was trying to show you how much she cared about you by making sure you had a good education. And then when I first met you, I agree. I felt like, you were really aggressive and all these things. But the more I got to know you, I was able to see who you are past, this tough guy exterior. But he had a baby face, it says, growing up. and I can see him being little and getting picked on. And so that just creates that tough. You have to be that tough alpha male that ain't nobody gonna mess with you after you have a gun put to your head, after you get gang beat up, and things like that. I can't relate to that. And I grew up in James Casey homes in the 70s. I was never in a fight. Ever. What? I have never been into a fight at all. What? And so I used to work in the bank, so that's the first time I saw a gun, when we had to have safety and security training. Never saw a gun in my life. Never been in a fight. And I think it kind of speaks to that, being in the South and even being a little bit protected. I was very naive growing up, and I was blown away and was reading through these pages like, wow, how can a child not eat? How can a child not know where your next meal is coming from? You have to steal a meal. And when I think about something that's funny in the book, how they would go to that place to eat, get something to eat, and then I'm here to pick up such and such food. It's like you had to hustle and figure out a way just to eat. And your mom was just in the wind. I cannot relate. When I was growing up, we ate dinner every day at 4 o'clock. We ate at the table every day. Wow. When my parents were together, we were a family. We did things on the weekends together. We went to the movies together. And even growing up in the projects, I felt like I was still well taken care of. We had TVs in our room and radios and boom boxes. And I never was cold. I never was hungry. And just my heart just went out.
Projects got the best eating in the city.
And it's like it really helped me to see how many black people go through these things that create the sense of that survival mode, that hustler mentality, that you have to do what you got to do by any means necessary type of thing. And I think everybody needs to read this book, One Chance to Be a Man, because people need to understand what it could be like growing up in the inner city, these mean streets, what it creates is just not that you're a black person. It's because you've been neglected. It's because you've been having to survive at a small age, that type of thing. So let me ask you guys this. How do you think the inner city experience, that poverty, that neglect, that single parent household impacts black men, period, in this country?
It's difficult. It's very difficult because you don't get a chance to be a child. You don't get a chance a lot of times to play and to just have your parents around when they're supposed to be around. Because I came from a single parent home, like I said, south side of Chicago, and my mom was never there. My mom was never, but I stayed with my grandmother, and then there were times when my grandmother was there, but it was like she wasn't there. She could be in the house, but she wasn't there. So and I'm an only. So there are a lot of times I feel like I've raised myself, and the whole fighting thing, that was natural and normal. There were times when you would be in school plotting to get you at the school,
Exactly.
because you had to make it from school home.
Yeah.
And you can't let your guard down, and you can't be that weak link in the chain. And that's what affects just all inner city kids, because it's not just happening to young men, but it's happening to young girls too. And for it to be harder on men, because they don't want you to show those emotions.
Exactly.
They always tell you. That's why I don't like when I hear young mothers call their 2- and 3-year-old son man. You already putting in his head that he a man. Man, come here. That's man. Give man. No, he's a child. Let him be a child.
Right.
Let him have these childlike moments, and stop telling these young men to man up. And then how they gonna man up when there's no example?
No example.
So it's difficult.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to do, I mean, we've all heard the inner city story over and over, and the one thing I wanted to do in this book was not just tell you about the police, the drugs, but I wanted people to read a mentality, and that.
So
that's true.
one chance to be a man, an American experience. Is this a book for just black people? Who is this book for?
I think it's a book for almost anybody, because the importance of this book to me is that regardless of what your circumstances is, what you got to go through or to overcome or just to cope, it's a mindset, it's a man thing. And if you can wrap your mind around the reality of what is, then you can find a way, as he said, to adapt our way out of some of these circumstances.
And anybody can learn from this.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of white America who has to come into the black community, especially for the younger kids. So think about those white teachers who have to work with our young kids from kindergarten, first grade, and so forth. And if they don't know the struggle that those young kids are going through, then they're not going to know how to teach them. They're not going to know how to be around them and to help them, to develop them. It's so much more to us than just Johnny's coming to school and he should be dressed properly. Maybe there's a reason why he keeps wearing those same clothes over again. Maybe there's a reason why he's stealing people's lunches. Maybe it's a reason why he's stealing people's jackets or money or things of that nature. And if you don't know that, if you can't break that down, then you don't know. And hopefully this is the book, One Chance to Be a Man, to help somebody else. I never thought of it like that. Maybe little Johnny is coming from a bad lifestyle or bad.
You know, you hear people say sometimes, like a lot of black people say, a lot of white people say, well, why can't y'all just get over it? I mean, get a job and do this. And the fact that all of us probably know a lot of people that work full time, and as Monty said, 2 jobs sometimes, and they still paycheck for, you know, just from paycheck to paycheck. The loss of any paycheck could mean devastation to the whole plan, you know. So, you know, you got white people out there with that mentality that black people are not doing well because they don't want to or because they aren't trying, and not be aware of this whole other dimension of reality, which is sometimes every day for us. You know, if they don't know that, then how can they relate to us in any way, you know?
Unfortunately, as you speak of the white people having the same mindset, some of our black people who have arrived and made it,
as can be attested to by some of our politicians,
potentially to do the same thing. Why can't you pull yourself up by your own bootstrap, not knowing full well that they did not make it to that position on their own, and they tend to forget, and they tend to look down on their brothers and sisters in a way that you would only.
I think that's a condition, though. I think that's something that they've been brainwashed into believing, or they're trying to please somebody else by using that rhetoric. You know, you got people like Stacey Dash, Ben Chase, and what's the little girl you put on the car? These people, when they speak up there, are they really black? You know, like you say, am I black? Are they really black?
But the one thing that the question you asked earlier was, what did I get out of it? Was One Chance to Be a Man, was the fact that he changed the direction of how he wanted his legacy to be remembered. Right. That he started thinking about his kids and how he wanted them to see him, how he wanted them to remember him, how he wanted them to strive to do better for themselves, to not follow my path but know my past, and not forget this is where I went, and this is what you do not want to have to go through in order to be successful. Let my experiences, my failures, which are should be your successes, because you don't have to go through this. I've already done it for you. So if you listen to the words that I'm speaking in this book, then they should help to steer you down a path that you don't have to go down.
Exactly.
You don't have to go down the road less traveled, you know, or you should go down the road less traveled, rather than the road that's always been open and everyone's going through, and have a tendency not to be the best road to go down because everybody's doing it. But the road that's less traveled is the road that you listen to from a person who've experienced it already to tell you what's going down that road, and you can go ahead and go through it without having to experience it. You should have experiences, yes, but why go through the pain of it if you can go through the experience of listening from the person who's already gone through it?
Exactly.
And one thing that was really, really important to me when I was writing it, I didn't want to make this book a hate the white man book. I really want to talk about the black experience from my experience. I didn't want to just point a finger at everybody and say, I mean, you know, I had a conversation with a representative from Thai Black Man, Christine Starr, and she asked me, was it choices that I was making, or was it circumstances? I think that's the question. Does she feel like it was circumstances, or were they choices? And, you know, I answered the question. I felt like circumstances and choices were one and the same. She felt like that basically the choices, I agreed with her when I heard her answer, that, you know, we do make choices, because I chose to stop selling crack. You know, when I had to. I made that choice. But the illusion is that you don't believe, or you don't think that you have a choice when you grow up in a certain environment. You don't think that you have a choice, so you just do what everybody else is doing to survive, or to eat, or to do whatever. But she was right. I mean, it's basically, it all comes down to choices at the end of the day. You know, I chose to write poetry, and I mean, had I been doing this back in Chicago, I would have never took the route that I took. You know, I chose not to go to that Catholic school. You know, you know, that's something that I didn't listen to my mom, you know, saying that you need to go to the school. And I ended up being in one of the worst schools ever that really enhanced the life that I didn't want to have. And so it all really do come down to choices in a lot of ways. And the illusion is that we think the circumstances make the choice for us, but really it doesn't. You know, it's like being that fighter, like she talked about, like Atia said. You know, being a fighter, I could have fought then, but I didn't know I had to fight anything to fight some of the choices that I made until my mother died. And I decided, I said, man, you know, as I put in the book, I said, man, how many people have I really killed selling crack? And I had to really, that was a really honest question to ask myself, because I didn't know you could die from smoking crack. And I had to really ask myself that question on how many people who bought bags from me who went home and died after they smoked what I sold them. I don't know. Until this day, I don't know how many people I've killed, or if I killed anybody selling dope, but it was a choice, and I had to sit back and I had to, you know, make a different decision. But only when the decision hit my family that I started to think about the choices I had. And that's what's sad about growing up in our community. It ain't until it hit us hard at home that we start to really start thinking differently about what we need to do to change.
And
that's
Some still
America.
never get it.
And that's America, though.
Some still never get
because
it.
the crack epidemic was there, nobody cared. Opioid hits the scene, and now we have to stop and
that's a
educate
problem.
ourselves. And
Exactly.
there's a problem.
But you know,
Have to regulate.
I really like the honesty of this book, this story. I like the rawness, the reality of it, and I like the person that saw fit to be dishonest with all of us, because I think this is a necessary thing. You know, so many of us we put up so many facades, and you never really get to the real story.
Right.
So I'd like to say personally that I appreciate you for writing this book. I mean, it has resounded in my mind. It's given me a lot of different things to think about, and I think it will anybody that reads it and understands where you're coming from with it. I think it's an important thing to have access to.
I
Look,
agree.
I don't need no more opinion. Once I got the wise opinion of the older man, that's it. That's it. If nobody else liked it, he likes it. That's how I look at it.
One Chance to Be a Man, an American experience. It's very entertaining. I like the way that you insert poetry, your real journal entries. You go through your childhood to moving to Nashville, to coming into being the man that you were meant to be. How important is this book to America? Is this a book that we should read? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's not a black book. It's not that black novel. It is an American novel. I know we're not literary critics, if you will, but would you recommend this book to be
I
read?
would.
Yes.
What's your overall assessment of the book?
My overall assessment is that the book is almost worthy to be put on the shelf where it should be read in schools.
Wow.
Because, like you said, it could be used as a stimulus for the teachers to be able to see the inside of a child's mind and what they go through, and have an understanding of what black kids or kids of color have a tendency to go through.
I think this book ranks right up there with like Black Barbara, Richard Wright, or The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. I think this book is an American classic in the making. I think it fits well to the circumstances of a lot of our inner city youth, and I think it is a door opener for America to get an inside view.
Absolutely.
And to use it for the good, not just get an inside view to look and then leave it at that. This is thought-provoking. Like you said, it's real, it's raw. He's very transparent. It makes you think later, like, wow, am I real? You know, have I been putting out my truth to the world? And I think everyone should read it, regardless of race, regardless of, you know, your personal background, but it should be read.
Yes, this is a book for America, by an American man. It is One Chance to Be a Man, an American experience, written by our own D-Revolution. Thank you, everyone, for your time today.
Thank you.
SoulConsciousBooks.net is where you can get the book. It has a perfect 5-star rating on Amazon, and it is one of the best books that I have read in a very long time. Thank you, everyone, for your time today.
Thank you for inviting us.